My husband bought beef trimmings every day but never ate them himself. After I cooked them up, he'd only put pieces in my bowl and our daughters. Eat more, you too. I'm useless, this is all I can give you right now. Once I make more money, things will be different. I rushed to reassure him. Secretly, my heart felt warm. Then one day, on my way to pick up our daughter, I passed by the butcher's stall. The owner recognized me right away. Sia, your husband really spoils you. He comes in every day and buys the premium cuts, always pays extra to get the best. Says his wife deserves nothing but the best. I froze on the spot, a chill spreading through my whole body. I had never once eaten premium steak. My daughter tugged at my hand, looking confused. Mom, we've always eaten beef trimmings at home. She was right. That's all she and I had ever eaten. So who was William buying those premium steaks for? My daughter's voice was small, but I heard every word. Do you sell beef trimmings separately? Maggie, the butcher, stopped what she was doing. Beef trimmings? We don't sell those. They're just scraps. She pointed toward a small table off to the side, where packages were stacked. We leave them over there. Homeless folks can take them for free. She frowned. Why do you ask? Your husband always buys the premium steak. Something squeezed tight around my heart. William and I had met through a setup, a blind date arranged by mutual friends. After we married, everyone said we were the perfect couple, devoted and steady. 10 years of marriage. Not a single fight. I never once thought he would cheat. I bent down and adjusted our daughter's scarf, my eyes stinging. William had knitted that scarf himself and given it to me on our first anniversary. That day, my usually composed husband was uncharacteristically flustered. I teased him that it was ugly, but I kept it tucked away carefully all these years, until I wrapped it around our daughter's neck. I pulled myself together and looked back at Maggie. Maggie, can I get your number? If my husband buys the premium steak, will you let me know? I'd like to have the other ingredients ready. I had no appetite for anything else after that. I took my daughter home. I'd barely started cooking when William walked through the door. Sia, I'm home. I missed you. He set down the beef trimmings and pulled me into his arms, his touch gentle. His phone rang. He immediately pulled away and stepped out onto the balcony. A message from Maggie lit up my screen. 4 pounds of premium beef. $300. Same as always. A string of laughing emojis followed. My heart sank. William came back from the balcony shortly after, an apologetic look on his face, his phone still showing an ended call. Sia, the company needs me to go back and revise a proposal. There's an issue with this project. I looked at the slightly strained expression on his face and nodded. William exhaled with relief and pulled me close again. Marrying you is the luckiest thing that ever happened to me. Once this project wraps up, let's take a trip somewhere. Just the two of us. I looked down at the coat he'd never taken off and quietly said, sure. He let go of me and headed for the door, steps quick and urgent. On the table sat the beef trimmings. The runoff had soaked into the surface. I grabbed a cloth and swept it all into the trash. My daughter stood in the bedroom doorway, clutching her stuffed rabbit. I opened my mouth, then closed it. I didn't know how to tell her that her father already had another family. I swallowed the ache rising in my chest and coaxed her softly. She was a good girl. She took her bread and milk and headed back to her room without a fuss. I followed William's car to an upscale neighborhood. I watched him carry the premium beef and groceries inside, happiness written all over his face, unguarded in a way I had never seen from him. Not even in our most intimate moments had he ever let himself go like that. I had always thought he was just reserved by nature, that he was that way with everyone. Turns out I was just the exception. While I stood there in a daze, the door swung open. A woman answered, flawless makeup, a fitted dress that traced every curve, heels clicking against the floor. Freya. William's high school desk neighbor. In his yearbook photo, the two of them were pressed close together, Freya laughing as she leaned against him. I had been jealous. William tore up the photo to make me feel secure. But I turned back that day, and saw him carefully piece it back together and hide it somewhere I'd never find. Back then, I loved him. So I forgave him for clinging to the past, and I believed we would make it to the end together. Now he was laughing, pulling that woman into his arms, burying his face in her neck, then conjuring a single rose to make Freya smile. Without realizing it, tears were streaming down my face. Daddy. A little boy burst out of the house. William scooped him up and swung him onto his shoulders. Let's go. We're home. A sharp ache bloomed in my chest, grief tangled with rage. I wanted to storm over there and confront them both, wanted to see William's face when I asked him why he threw away 10 years of marriage. But the door closed behind them. Faint laughter drifted through it. I bit down on my lip until it bled. I didn't let myself cry. For a moment I even thought, maybe if I had never found out, I could have kept living with my eyes closed, happily enough. But I knew that was impossible. I drove home in a daze. Our daughter was already asleep. My phone buzzed, a text from William apologizing for working late, with a $50 transfer. He spent $300 on premium beef for his mistress. He sent me $50 and fed me beef trimmings. Tears blurred my screen. I let myself fall apart, sobbing until I could barely breathe, until the grief burned itself out and left me numb. Then I opened my email. A message from the company. Our new New York office has huge potential. A branch manager position is yours when you get here. I typed back 2 words without hesitation: I'm in. New York was where I grew up. Going back was nothing but good. I had given up that promotion before, for William's sake, to keep our family whole. I stayed and did it all, the job, the house, the daughter. But I didn't need to do that anymore. My daughter and I were leaving together. I reached out to a college friend who practiced law and asked her to draft divorce papers. William was meticulous. He had almost certainly been quietly funneling money to Freya for years. But what was mine, I wasn't leaving behind a single dollar of. As his legal wife, I had every right to access William's accounts. His monthly salary, $20,000. $12,000 went to Freya every month. Another $2,000 for gifts. The remaining $6,000 came to me for household expenses. I had taken that $6,000, added my own salary, and stretched it across the mortgage, the car payment, utilities, groceries, scrimping so hard I wouldn't let myself buy a new piece of clothing. Meanwhile, William had transferred nearly $1.16 million to Freya over the years. Every transfer was labeled household expenses. Going back 8 years, I could see a monthly charge for prenatal checkups. I hadn't even finished reviewing everything when I heard the front door open. I saved the records quickly and moved them into a folder labeled divorce. By the time I was done, William was standing in the doorway. You're still up? Helping an intern refine a proposal. He rubbed my temples. On the screen was a revised draft. Go to bed. I'll handle the rest. I reached over and closed the laptop, then looked up at him steadily. How was the steak? The arms around me went rigid. William's breathing faltered. But he steadied himself quickly. Jason ordered late-night food and threw in an order for me. What William didn't know was that I had run into Jason on the way home. No late-night food. No overtime. I wasn't ready to call him out yet. I just nodded. I'm sleeping in Amy's room tonight. Before he could answer, I was already headed to our daughter's room. His touch now made my skin crawl. People are strange that way, love can turn on a dime. The day I went to pick up the divorce papers, the school called. Please come in as soon as you can. Amy hit a classmate. I tucked the papers into my bag and rushed over. In the office, Amy stood with her head down, saying nothing. Freya sat to the side, holding her son. I crouched down and kept my voice soft. Amy, I want to hear what happened. John said Mom is a homewrecker. A mistress who broke up a family. A 9-year-old doesn't fully understand those words. But she could feel the cruelty in them. He said those things about you, so I hit him. The teacher shifted uncomfortably. Kids don't really know what they're saying. Freya looked polished as ever, glossy waves, a full face of makeup. William had kept her well. She was in her 30s but looked 10 years younger. My son wasn't wrong, she said. The contempt in her eyes was naked. She didn't bother hiding the provocation. You seem to know a lot about my family, I said, with a cold smile. Everyone knows Amy's dad never showed up. If you're not the other woman, what are you? Go ahead and call your husband right now, let's settle this face to face. She was certain I couldn't. Fine. I was curious what William's face would look like when he saw us both in the same room. I dialed. It rang twice and went dead. The room went quiet. The teacher threw me a look of thinly veiled disdain. As a parent, you really should be setting a better example. Freya didn't bother hiding her laugh. Other woman, Amy's mom is the other woman. Amy's the illegitimate kid. John clapped along gleefully. I gripped my phone. This actually made things easier. I didn't need to hold back anymore. Then Freya calmly called a contact saved as husband. He picked up immediately. Babe, our son's in trouble at school. Can you come? On my way. Give me a minute. That low, steady voice, I had heard it for 10 years. I would know it anywhere. William arrived fast. Freya, is our son okay? He saw me the moment he stepped through the door and went completely silent. Babe. Freya crossed the room and pressed herself against him, playing wounded. See ya. He moved his lips. He didn't say anything else. Do you two know each other? The teacher asked, stepping in. William met my eyes. His flickered. No. I don't know her. That hit me somewhere cold. 10 years of marriage. And William's answer was, I don't know her. He couldn't look at me. He turned to Amy. Apologize. No room for argument in his tone. I stepped in front of my daughter. You're saying I'm the mistress? That Amy is illegitimate? He hesitated, just briefly, then looked at me directly. As a parent, I'd hope you'd have the courage to take responsibility in front of the children. William's words nailed me in place like a public shaming, while Freya stood beside him looking like she had won. I had expected this. I still felt the sting. I called the police. William, stone-faced, signed the mediation agreement on behalf of the family. I wasn't surprised. I accepted it calmly. William. I want a divorce. His expression darkened. His tone wasn't kind. Freya is a single mom. We're old friends. I was just playing the part of her husband. She doesn't have what you have. As a woman, I'd hope you could be compassionate. If you blow this up and ruin her reputation. I watched William's face become a stranger's. He had thought about it. If I accepted the label of mistress, that shame would follow me for life. It could follow Amy too. But all he could see was Freya crying, because her own lie had been exposed. William, I mean it. I pulled out the divorce papers. There's a pen at the police station. Might as well sign while we're here. Seeing that I wasn't bluffing, William felt a flicker of panic, then steadied himself. Sia wouldn't actually divorce him. He knew better than anyone how much she loved him. They had been solid for 10 years. She was angry, that was all. She'd cool down. Reassured by his own logic, William looked back at me and relaxed. Take Amy home. Give yourself some time to calm down. Then he walked over to Freya. His stride had a faint air of retreat. I put the divorce papers away. I knew it wouldn't be that simple. Fine. If he wanted to drag it out, he could wait for the lawsuit. 8 years of infidelity. Everyone in that upscale neighborhood believed William and Freya were married. A few conversations with the neighbors would be enough to establish that, and combined with the bank records, it was plenty to support a bigamy charge. Sia, your ex is unbelievable. He used your joint assets to buy her a house and a car. The down payment came from your own savings, the money you brought into the marriage. My friend was furious in our text thread. That spineless piece of garbage. By the time I'm done in court, he won't have a thing left. I stayed calm and sent her Freya's address, then laid out what I needed. She would handle gathering the evidence. Freya was used to spending freely. I'd like to see how she planned to pay back over $1 million. That thought actually lifted my mood. I took my daughter out to dinner. William dropped Freya off and, for the first time, turned down her offer to stay for dinner. He wanted to get home. Sia was probably sulking, and he needed to smooth things over. He had been too harsh earlier, and he'd let his feelings get out of control. He'd hurt her. He needed to fix it. On the way, he passed the butcher. The stall was still open. On impulse, he bought a premium cut. By the time he came to, it was already wrapped and bagged. Want some beef scraps too? Your wife loves them, right? She was just here asking about them a few days ago. I told her, you're a good husband. Real thoughtful. The gentle embarrassment he had imagined did not come. William's face went pale. He paid and rushed home. At the trash bin outside the building, he found a scarf. His scarf, the one he had knitted for Sia. She had thrown it away. William's mind was a mess. He needed to get upstairs. Fast. He had this irrational feeling that if he was too slow, Sia would disappear from his life for good. When he got home, I was just hanging up the phone. I'd been arranging Amy's school transfer. Her new school in New York was set. My parents had already sorted everything. Amy could start whenever we arrived. Sia. William was disheveled, still catching his breath. I glanced at the premium steak he was holding. Not tired of it yet? I watched his expression fall, and felt just fine about it. I went back to packing. There wasn't much in this house that belonged to me. One small suitcase was enough. Sia, When did it start? I cut him off. I still wanted to hear it from him. Silence stretched between us. Finally, under the weight of my gaze, William broke. 8 years ago. When you were in the hospital having Amy, Freya came back to the States. She was in a bad place. She wanted to drink, so we met up, and one thing led to another. I swear it was only that once. His voice cracked with emotion. My expression didn't change. William let out a hollow laugh. I never expected it to happen from just that one time. I didn't believe it. I made Freya get an amniocentesis. The results came back. The child was mine. William. Do you even believe that yourself? A grown man who couldn't push away a woman who came onto him drunk. How convenient. The divorce papers are on the table. Does it have to come to this? My patience was gone. I threw a hard drive onto the table. Sign it, or see you in court. The hard drive clicked against the wooden table, a sharp, clean sound that seemed to slice through the heavy silence of the room. William didn't reach for it immediately. He stood there, the expensive cut of beef still clutched in his hand, the grease from the butcher's paper slowly soaking through his fingers. He looked at the drive, then at my suitcase sitting by the door, and finally at me. Sia, he said, his voice barely above a whisper, trying to find that steady, reasonable tone he had used for 10 years to keep me quiet. You're Overreacting. We can talk about this. The hard drive, what is this? Open it, I said. My voice was flat. I felt no anger, no urge to scream. There was only a cold, hollow space where my husband used to be. The password is our wedding anniversary. Let's see if you still remember it. He hesitated, then slowly set the raw meat on the edge of the table. He opened my laptop, plugged in the drive, and typed in the numbers. As the screen lit up, reflecting in his eyes, I watched his face drain of color. The folders were organized by year, dating back 8 years. Inside were PDFs of every single bank transfer, every mortgage payment he had made on Freya's townhouse, every car lease payment, and every luxury gift receipt. Clara, my lawyer friend, had done a spectacular job. She had even managed to retrieve the closed accounts William thought were long forgotten. This is... William swallowed hard, his fingers trembling on the trackpad. This is a misunderstanding. Sia, Freya was in a desperate situation. Her family cut her off when she got pregnant. I couldn't just leave my own flesh and blood to starve in the streets. Your own flesh and blood, I repeated, letting the words hang in the air. But Amy and I, we were your family too. Or did you forget that while Freya's son was eating $300 steaks, your own daughter was chewing on the scraps the butcher throws to the homeless? I was trying to save money, he protested, his voice cracking, desperation finally leaking through his polished exterior. The mortgage on this apartment, the car, the utility bills, I paid all of that. I kept a roof over your head. If I bought the cheap meat, it was because I thought we were partners, that you understood we had to make sacrifices. Sacrifices, I murmured. I walked over to the table, took the premium steak he had brought home, and dropped it into the trash can next to the sink. The heavy thud of the meat hitting the plastic liner sounded like a closing door. You didn't ask me to sacrifice, William. You starved us emotionally and financially, so you could play the heroic provider for another woman. You made me look like a fool in front of the entire neighborhood, in front of our daughter, and in front of your mistress. Sia, please, he said, stepping toward me. He reached out to grab my hand, but I stepped back, avoiding his touch as if he were covered in ash. I love you. I swear I love you. What I have with Freya, it's just responsibility. It's a burden. You and Amy are my real home. A burden that costs $12,000 a month, I said, looking at the screen where a transfer from our joint savings account was highlighted in red. A burden that took my premarital savings, the money my parents gave me when we got married, to pay the down payment on her house. His eyes widened. He hadn't realized I had traced the down payment back to that specific account. I am going to get every single cent back, William, I said softly. And then, I am going to take Amy, and we are leaving. You can't do that, he said, his tone suddenly shifting from pleading to cold defense. The law doesn't work that way. I earned that money. And you can't just take Amy away from me. I am her father. You denied being her mother's husband in front of her entire school today, I reminded him. You stood there and let a child call her illegitimate. You are no father to her. You are a stranger who lived in our house. I picked up my suitcase. The divorce papers are on the table. You have 24 hours to sign them voluntarily. If you don't, Clara will file the lawsuit first thing Monday morning. We will sue for the return of all unauthorized transfers of marital assets, and I will file a formal complaint for bigamy. Bigamy? William let out a harsh, nervous laugh. I never married her, Sia. You can't charge me with bigamy. In this jurisdiction, holding yourself out to the community as husband and wife, cohabiting, and raising a child together under a common law assumption constitutes bigamy if you are already legally married, I said, repeating the legal brief Clara had read to me earlier. All of Freya's neighbors think you are married. You signed the school registry as John's father and Freya's husband. You signed the lease on her townhouse as her husband. We have the signatures, William. We have the school records. The nervous laugh died on his lips. He looked at me as if seeing me for the first time, not the quiet, compliant wife who stayed home and cooked his meals, but a woman who had spent the last several days quietly sharpening a knife. I'm leaving now, I said. Don't call me. Talk to Clara. I walked into Amy's room. She was sitting on her bed, her small backpack already zipped and resting by her feet. She had her stuffed rabbit tucked under her arm. She didn't ask where we were going. She just stood up and reached for my hand. Are we going to Grandma's? She asked in a small voice. Yes, baby, I said, kneeling down to look her in the eyes. We're going to New York. We're going home. She nodded, her little fingers tightening around mine. Will we have to eat the scraps anymore? My heart broke into 1,000 sharp pieces, but I kept my voice steady. No. Never again. We are going to have the best of everything. We checked into a quiet business hotel near the airport that night. I didn't want to go to my parents' house just yet. I wanted to handle the legal paperwork first without their protective anger clouding my judgment. Amy fell asleep quickly, exhausted by the emotional toll of the day. I sat by the window, watching the planes take off into the dark night sky, their lights blinking until they vanished into the clouds. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was a message from Maggie, the butcher. Sia, your husband came by earlier. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. I'm sorry if I caused any trouble by telling you about the steaks. I thought you knew. I typed back, you didn't cause any trouble, Maggie. You saved me. Thank you. The truth was, Maggie's casual revelation had been the final thread that unraveled the tapestry of lies I'd been living in for a decade. For years, I had blamed myself for our tight finances. I had felt guilty every time I wanted to buy a new dress, every time I looked at a pair of shoes that cost more than $50. I had convinced myself that William was a good man doing his best in a brutal economy. That I looked at my hands, rough from years of dishwater and cheap soap, and felt a profound sense of disgust, not for William, but for the version of myself that had allowed him to diminish me so completely. The next morning, I met Clara at her office. She was already surrounded by stacks of financial records, her coffee mug steaming on a pile of legal briefs. He called me, Clara said, not even looking up as I walked in. 3 times. Last night. Twice this morning. He's panicking, Sia. Did he sign? I asked, pulling out a chair. Of course not. He's trying to negotiate. He offered to give you the apartment and $2,000 a month in child support if you drop the demand for the $1.16 million and agree to joint custody. Clara finally looked up, her eyes sharp behind her glasses. I told him to go play in traffic. What's our next move? We file, Clara said, tapping a thick blue folder. I've drafted the petition for dissolution of marriage on the grounds of irretrievable breakdown and financial misconduct. But more importantly, we are filing a separate civil suit against Freya for the recovery of fraudulently transferred marital assets. Against Freya directly? Yes. Under the law, since she received those funds knowing, or having reason to know, that they were marital property transferred without your consent, she is liable. We are asking the court to place a constructive trust on her townhouse and her car, and to freeze her bank accounts to prevent her from dissipating the assets. A cold comfort washed over me. Can we actually get the money back? The law is on our side here, Clara explained, leaning forward. William used your joint savings and his income, which is legally 50% yours, to fund a second household. Since you did not consent, and since these weren't standard household expenses for your family, the court will view this as a dissipation of marital assets. We will claw back every dollar. The fact that your personal premarital funds were used for her down payment makes it even easier. That's non-marital property. He had absolutely no right to touch it. And the bigamy charge? It's a lever, Clara said, her voice dropping to a practical, professional whisper. In this state, criminal bigamy is rarely prosecuted unless there's a second marriage certificate. But we are using the civil equivalent, alienation of affection and criminal conversation, combined with the public representation of marriage, to damage his professional standing. William's firm is a high-end wealth management group. Do you think they want a senior partner publicly accused of running a double life, stealing from his wife's premarital savings, and being sued for financial fraud? The threat of exposure will force him to settle on our terms. I don't want a settlement that lets him off easy, I said, my voice steady. I want him to feel what it's like to have nothing. Clara smiled, a slow, dangerous expression. Then let's go to court. The summons was served to William on Tuesday morning, right in the middle of a departmental meeting at his firm. According to Clara's contact at the office, the process server walked right past the receptionist, entered the glass-walled conference room, and handed the papers to William in front of 3 senior partners and a major client. Mr. William Vance, the server had asked loudly. You've been served. An hour later, Freya was served at her home. I would have loved to see her face when the deputy sheriff handed her the papers detailing the lawsuit against her, listing the $1.16 million she owed to the estate of Sia Vance. By Tuesday afternoon, my phone was ringing incessantly. William's name flashed on the screen over and over. I ignored every call. Then, a text came from an unknown number. Sia, we need to talk. This is Freya. You are destroying my son's life. He has nothing to do with your marital problems. If you have some dignity left, meet me. I stared at the screen. The sheer audacity of this woman, who had lived off my sweat and sacrifice for 8 years, talking to me about dignity. I typed back a brief message: the coffee shop near your townhouse. 4 p.m. Don't bring William. I arrived 10 minutes early. I ordered a black coffee and sat by the window. When Freya walked in, she didn't look like the flawless, glowing woman I had seen at the school a few days ago. Her hair was pulled back hastily, and her expensive designer handbag seemed to weigh her down. The confidence she had carried so easily when she was protected by William's money had vanished. Replaced by a sharp, defensive tension, she sat down opposite me without ordering anything. "You're a monster," she said, her voice trembling but sharp. "You're freezing my accounts. My son's school tuition is due next week. How am I supposed to pay that?" "With your own money," I said, taking a slow sip of my coffee. "Or does a woman of your standard not know how to work?" "I raised William's son," she hissed, leaning across the table. "He made a commitment to us. He loves John. He loves me. You were just a duty to him, Sia. A boring, domestic chore he had to tolerate because he didn't have the courage to leave you earlier. If he loved you so much, why did he keep me?" I asked, looking her dead in the eyes. "Why did he spend 10 years sleeping in my bed, eating my food, and letting me manage his household?" "I'll tell you why, Freya. Because William is a coward. He wanted the stability of a loyal, hard-working wife to keep his life together, and he wanted the thrill of a high-maintenance mistress to make him feel young. But he didn't want to pay for either of us with his own sacrifices. He made me pay for you. That's between you and him," she argued. "You can't sue me for the money he gave me. It was a gift." "A gift bought with stolen funds," I corrected her. "You knew he was married. You knew his salary was marital property. You took over $1 million of my family's security, including my personal inheritance. In the eyes of the law, that is not a gift. It is unjust enrichment. And you are going to pay it back. Even if we have to sell your townhouse, your car, and every designer bag in your closet." Freya's face went pale. The reality of her situation was finally sinking in. She wasn't just losing a boyfriend, she was losing her entire lifestyle. "William will protect me," she whispered, though she sounded like she was trying to convince herself. "He won't let you do this." "William can't even protect himself," I said, leaning back. "His firm has already placed him on administrative leave pending the investigation into his financial conduct. He's about to be ruined, Freya. When the money stops, let's see how much pure love is left between you two." She stared at me, her lips parting in horror. "Have a nice day, Freya," I said. I stood up, left a $5 bill on the table to cover my coffee, and walked out into the cool afternoon air. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in swift, clinical destruction. Claire's legal team worked with a forensic accountant who tore through William's financial life like a hurricane. They discovered that William had not only transferred money directly to Freya, but he had also used his company's corporate reimbursement system to hide some of his personal expenses with her, claiming they were client dinners and business travel. When his firm's compliance department caught wind of the forensic audit we had requested through the court, they launched their own internal investigation. On a Thursday morning, William was officially terminated from his position as senior partner for ethical violations and misappropriation of company funds. His stock options were frozen, and his severance was withheld pending the resolution of the internal audit. That he was ruined. That evening, I was packing the last of Amy's toys into boxes in our apartment. When the doorbell rang, I opened it to find William standing on the mat. He looked 10 years older. His suit was wrinkled, his hair was greasy, and his eyes were bloodshot. He smelled faintly of cheap whiskey. "Sia," he said, his voice hoarse. "Can I come in? Please?" I stood in the doorway, blocking his path. "No. Amy is asleep. What do you want?" "William?" "They fired me," he said, his voice cracking. He looked down at the floor, his shoulders shaking. "Everything I worked for, 20 years in finance, gone. In a single afternoon. No one in this city will ever hire me again." "You did that to yourself," I said. "You chose to steal from your company and your wife. Did you think there would never be a reckoning?" "I did it for my kids," he cried out, his voice rising in desperation. "I wanted both of my children to have a good life. Is that such a crime?" "You fed one child scraps and the other steak, William," I said, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Do not dare to use our daughter to justify your greed and your lust. You didn't do this for your kids. You did it for your own ego." I have no money left, Sia, he pleaded, looking up at me with tear-filled eyes. The court froze my personal accounts today. I can't even pay the rent on this apartment. If you don't drop the lawsuit against Freya, she's going to lose her home. Where is John supposed to go? He can go wherever you go, I said. After all, you two are a family, right? That's what you told the teacher at the school. That you didn't know me. Well, now you get your wish. You don't know me, and I don't know you. Sia, please, he sobbed, dropping to his knees on the welcome mat. He reached for the hem of my coat. I'll sign the papers. I'll sign whatever you want. Just don't take everything. Leave me something to live on. I have nothing. I looked down at him, this man I had loved for a decade, this man I had scrimped and saved for, whose approval I had begged for while eating cold scraps in our quiet kitchen. I felt no pity. I felt no satisfaction. I only felt a deep, profound boredom. You have exactly what you gave us, William, I said. You have your freedom. Now get up and get out of my hallway before I call the police. He stayed on his knees for a long moment, sobbing into his hands. Finally, realizing that his tears had no power over me anymore, he slowly dragged himself to his feet. He turned and walked down the long, carpeted corridor, his steps heavy and hollowed as I closed the door, locked it, and leaned against the wood. For the first time in 10 years, I took a deep, full breath. My chest didn't ache. My heart didn't squeeze that I was free. William refused to sign the final settlement because Freya convinced him that they could still win in court if they fought the asset recovery. She had hired her own lawyer, a flashy television attorney who specialized in high conflict divorces, promising her that they could protect her townhouse under the pretense of child support accommodation. It was a tactical mistake. All it did was drag their private shame into a public courtroom. The trial took place on a rainy Tuesday in late November. The courtroom was small, smelling of old paper and damp coats that I sat next to Clara, wearing a simple, well-tailored navy suit I had bought with my first paycheck from my new job in New York. I had started working remotely ahead of our move, and my salary was already double what William had allowed me to believe we could live on. My hair was cut short, and I wore no jewelry except for a simple watch my parents had given me for my graduation years ago. Across the aisle sat William and Freya. They weren't sitting together. The pressure of the last month had clearly fractured their eternal love. Freya sat as far away from William as the small bench allowed, her arms crossed, her eyes fixed on the ceiling. William sat with his head in his hands, staring at the polished mahogany table. The judge, a formidable woman in her late 50s named Judge Vance, no relation to William, reviewed the financial statements with a grim, practiced eye. Mr. Vance, Judge Vance said, her voice echoing in the quiet room. I have reviewed the forensic accounting report. According to these records, over a period of 8 years, you transferred a total of $1,164,000 from accounts containing marital assets to the co-defendant, Miss Freya Lynn. Is this correct? William's lawyer stood up. Your Honor, my client was providing support for his biological son. This was an obligation of support, not a fraudulent transfer. An obligation of support? Judge Vance raised an eyebrow. At $12,000 a month? Plus lease payments on a luxury SUV? Plus a $300,000 down payment on a property solely registered in Ms. Lynn's name? All while his legal wife and his other child were living on a household budget of less than $4,000 a month, excluding rent? The lifestyle of the two households was different, Your Honor, the lawyer stammered. Indeed it was, Judge Vance said, her voice dripping with quiet sarcasm. She turned her gaze to Freya's attorney. And Ms. Lynn, you claim you had no knowledge that these funds were marital property? Freya's lawyer stood up, attempting a confident smile. Your Honor, my client was led to believe that Mr. Vance's marriage was essentially over and that he was using his personal, separate funds to support his family with her. She is an innocent third party. An innocent third party who was served with a copy of Mr. Vance's marriage certificate 8 years ago when she applied for a joint lease with him. Clara stood up, holding a document. Your Honor, we have submitted into evidence the rental application for the luxury apartment they shared in 2018. On that application, the landlord requested a credit check, which listed Mr. Vance's legal marital status as married. Ms. Lynn signed that application directly below his signature. She knew. Freya shot a glare at William, her eyes filled with pure hatred. William didn't look back. The law in this state is clear, Judge Vance said, tapping her gavel once to silence the beginning of a murmur from Freya's side. A spouse cannot gift or transfer substantial marital assets to a third party without the express or implied consent of the other spouse. Ms. Lin, you received these funds without legal justification. The court hereby orders the dissolution of the marital estate with a highly disproportionate division of assets in favor of the plaintiff, Sia Vance. She began reading the judgment, her voice steady and relentless. The townhouse currently occupied by Ms. Lin is ordered to be sold, with 100% of the proceeds of the sale, up to the amount of the $300,000 down payment plus appreciation, returned to the plaintiff as her non-marital property. The remaining balance of the $1.16 million is declared a debt owed by both William Vance and Freya Lin, jointly and severally, to Sia Vance. To satisfy this debt, all frozen accounts belonging to Mr. Vance and Ms. Lin will be liquidated and transferred to the plaintiff. Furthermore, sole legal and physical custody of the minor child, Amy Vance, is awarded to the plaintiff, with supervised visitation for the father only upon the child's request. Your Honor. Freya shrieked, standing up, her polished facade completely shattering. You can't sell my house. Where am I supposed to live? My son, sit down, Ms. Lin, Judge Vance said, her voice dropping to a dangerous, icy register. You lived on another woman's labor and another child's deprivation for nearly a decade. You will find accommodation suitable to your actual income, which I suggest you begin earning immediately. Case dismissed. The gavel fell with a loud, final crack. The courtroom cleared out quickly, leaving only the attorneys and the parties to sign the final paperwork. Freya didn't wait for the ink to dry. She grabbed her bag and marched out of the room, not even glancing at William. She was already on her phone, likely calling her real estate agent or another man who could rescue her from the wreckage. William remained at the table. He looked up as I walked past him to sign the registry. Sia, he whispered. You got what you wanted. You took everything. Are you happy now? I paused, looking down at him. He looked small, defeated, and entirely insignificant. I'm not happy, William, I said, my voice quiet but clear. Happiness isn't something that comes from watching you fall. But I am satisfied. I am satisfied that my daughter will never have to look at her father and wonder why she wasn't enough. I am satisfied that the next time you buy a premium steak, it will be with money you actually earned, if you can ever find a job that pays for it. He closed his eyes, a single tear escaping and rolling down his wrinkled cheek. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry. I know you are, I said. But you're only sorry you got caught. I signed the paper, handed the pen back to the clerk, and walked out of the courtroom. Clara met me in the hallway, a wide, triumphant smile on her face. We did it. Sia. The house sale will be finalized within 60 days. You're going to get almost the entire amount back. You can buy a beautiful place in New York. Thank you, Clara, I said, hugging her tightly. For everything. Go home to your girl, Clara said, patting my back. Your flight is tonight. Right? Yes. The movers are already finished. We're leaving straight for the airport. The flight to New York was smooth. Amy slept the entire way, her head resting on my shoulder, her small hand tucked into mine. When we landed, the air was crisp and cold, smelling of snow and asphalt. It was the smell of my childhood, the smell of fresh starts that my parents were waiting for us at the arrival's gate. My mother burst into tears when she saw Amy, pulling her into a tight, protective embrace. My father walked over to me, took my suitcase, and put his arm around my shoulders. He didn't ask about the trial, or the money, or William. Welcome home, sweetheart, he said gently. We've got the car warmed up. We drove through the brightly lit streets of Manhattan, the city sparkling like a field of diamonds in the winter night. Amy pressed her nose against the glass, her eyes wide with wonder. Mom, look, she pointed at a massive Christmas tree in a hotel plaza. It's so big. We'll go see it tomorrow, baby, I promised, kissing the top of her head. That my parents had helped me find a beautiful 3-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn, overlooking the river. It was in a quiet, tree-lined neighborhood with an excellent public school just 2 blocks away. When we arrived, the apartment was warm, the radiator humming a comforting, steady song. My mother had already stocked the kitchen with fresh groceries. After we unpacked our bags and got Amy settled into her new bed, complete with a window that looked out at the distant, glittering skyline, I went into the kitchen. That I was exhausted, but for the first time in years, my mind was perfectly quiet. I opened the refrigerator to get a glass of water. On the middle shelf sat a heavy, brown paper package from the local organic butcher my mother frequented. That I opened the paper. Inside were 2 beautiful, thick-cut, premium ribeye steaks. That I stared at them for a long moment, the marble of the fat white against the rich, deep red of the meat. That I didn't feel any cold chill this time. I didn't feel any fear or suspicion. That I took out a pan, turned on the stove, and began to cook. The rich, savory aroma filled the quiet apartment, chased away the last lingering ghosts of the drafty kitchen where I had spent 10 years of my life. When the meat was done, I sliced it onto 2 warm plates that I walked into Amy's room. She was sitting up in bed, reading a book by the soft light of a lamp. She looked up and smiled as the scent of the food reached her. "What's that, Mom?" she asked. I set the plate down on her nightstand, then sat down beside her with my own. "It's dinner, baby," I said, handing her a fork. "The best cut. Just for us." She took a bite, her eyes lighting up. "It's so good. It's so soft." "Yes," I said, taking a bite of my own. The meat was tender, rich, and tasted exactly like freedom. "And we are going to have it every single day."